right. Okay. So, Randy, we would love to hear you describe what you do, how we fit into what you do, and then where things go from there. And if you, after you have spoken, everybody stay mute, including me. We will have an opportunity for people to ask questions. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, Randy Weitzner.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Randi Weitzner. I've been with DA about 6 years. I started out doing mostly chapter work in Montreal and have worked my way up and down the ladder and across the organization in a lot of different directions. So I did the chapter work, and then I did some work for Democrats Abroad Canada. And I've transitioned into doing more global focused work in that I'm working with all the country committees on slightly bigger projects. So I do voter assistance training, phone banking support, and I'm the New York State team lead, and I also do training and work on the Zoom rooms. Um, my primary focus in my work in Democrats Abroad is ballots and boxes. I'm not shy to say, and have said it many times before, I will leave it to other people to talk about policy, and I'll leave it to other people to talk about the politics. All I really care about is finding Americans and helping them vote. And so that was part of what drew me to phone banking initially. And so about 2 years or so ago, I worked with Stephanie Perry, who was running phone banking, and I got very engaged in phone banking and made tons and tons of calls. And she and I had this sort of friendly competition going, and we would check in with each other in the morning and sort of give each other a little nudge about how many more calls I had made than she did. And then she would laugh at me and say, well, I'm up earlier in the morning. So by the time you get up tomorrow morning, I will have made more calls than you made. So too bad for you. And we were really very engaged and had a lot of fun with it. And for me, as someone who likes having contact with members, this was a great opportunity to reach out to members directly, and inform them and encourage them and get them to do, as Susan Penrod is always saying, our members do what we ask them to do. We ask them to request and send back their ballots, and they do it because we ask. So I've also been engaged with the CallHub support team now, working with the phone banking coordinators, trying to train new phone bankers and support existing phone bankers if there are questions or issues when they are doing the phone banking. The connection between some of my other roles for voter assistance, and I can talk a little bit about voter protection as well, but for voter assistance, it is really important that phone bankers know that when you mark off that somebody needs help, that what you put in the notes box gets sent to the help desk. It's not sent off into space somewhere and not dealt with. It is dealt with. So it matters what you write in the notes box, because as someone who works on the help desk, I go to the application where all of those requests for help come in. And basically, the IT team is taking what you put in the notes and putting it in the form of what we call a ticket. So the member who is called is identified. That creates the ticket, and then whatever the caller has put down in the notes box is what I see as the help desk person to try and answer the voter questions. So having said that, it does matter what you write. So saying something like member has a problem with voting is less helpful than saying members having difficulty registering. Member has children who've just come of age and would like to know how to get them registered. Member can't remember their last US address, so they're struggling. So if you can, if as a phone banker, you can be specific, that is very meaningful to me as a voter assistant. I will be honest, it still requires my following up with the member to double check exactly what the problem is, but it helps orient me to what materials I might need to have on hand to help them. So we in voter assistance, we are we're pretty determined to make sure that voters get the help they need. So I spend many hours a day calling counties all over the United States in support of our members who are having difficulty. So if people don't know if they're registered, if people have been refused, if people don't know their US address, they don't understand the process, I will call a county and find that out for them. And then I will write back to them. I will email them from the help desk and I will give them that help. So just know that you as a caller are an important part of solving that problem, because that voter might not have known where to go to ask for help. And by your reaching out to them, by doing phone banking, they have an opportunity to talk to a phone banker and say, yes, I am having a problem and I would appreciate some help. But I would also add a caveat that it's not a phone banker's job to provide that information to the member. That tends to make the call longer than we can afford. And there are often nuances of the problems that the voter is having that it would be better to work on after you're off the call. The point of the call is to provide that information, that messaging to the member about the importance of registration, or now the importance of getting their ballot back. Ask them if they have a problem, update emails if it needs to be, and then you need to get off the phone. I can spend many days going back and forth by email with a member and collecting information that's helpful for me to solve their problem, but that's not for you to do. And it's better that way because it makes it easier for you as a phone banker. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. It's not your job. And if someone starts to ask you lots of questions about that, you can say, I'm sorry, that's not my job. We have voter assistance and we have voter protection people who it's their job to do that. So if you have a problem, just tell me you have a problem and we move on. The next level up from what I do for voter assistance is voter protection. There are some states, can we say Georgia, Texas, Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, who seem to be making a habit of making it harder for voters to get their stuff and to get it back. And so when we see many instances in states from certain counties or certain areas, we can bump it up to voter protection where we have volunteer lawyers who are willing to engage with us, and if necessary, write lawyers' letters. So that is good for our members because we can often solve bigger problems in some of these states and make the process smoother for our members. I'm trying to think, Connie sent me a list of things. So I think that I've covered the first few that Connie asked me about. One of the questions she had was when and why to email the CallHub help desk. So just to make a distinction, there's a help desk and there's also the support email. So the help desk is more about technical issues. If you can't log on, if your calls aren't going through, or the people that you're calling say they can't hear you, those kinds of things. Caller support is more around, I guess I'd say the softer issues. So, we try and be there to support phone bankers who maybe aren't feeling as confident or have concerns about how they're managing the calls, or have other kinds of questions that are not as technical. So it's CallHub Help Desk for the technical and then CallHub Support for some of those other issues. Other than that, in terms of best practices and do's and don'ts, which is one of the things Connie asked about, I mean, I think that we all know that the calls can get fairly expensive if we stay on too long. So the aim is really to get that message out to the member about getting ballots back. It's an important state. It's an important district. If you have a problem, I'm going to mark it down. Is this your correct email? Do we need any other information? Does anything else need updating? It's been great talking to you. Goodbye. And move on. I mean, that's really what it's about. There's some tricks about not getting caught up in a loop with some members who are anxious to stay on the phone. And you can tell them I have a quota. I have 100 more calls I have to make. I'm sorry, I can't stay on with you. You know, they don't know that that's not true, so you could say it. Anyway, I think that's it, unless there's something else, Connie, that you thought that phone bankers might want to know about voter assistance or voter protection or some of those other things.
Unmute myself here. Okay. Well, I think, for instance, the issue about when to send a message to CallHub, I think that perhaps I have been using CallHub to refer things that maybe should have just been in the notes. Maybe I've duplicated effort by
Oh,
sending an information like maybe doing a screenshot of the voter and then saying the voter's profile, sending it to CallHub and saying this person is, uh, whatever the issue was. I sent one time that I said I thought it needed to be bumped up to voter protection, but I sent it through CallHub to be advanced because it was a woman who had lived in both Texas and North Carolina and couldn't remember the address of one and there's something and neither state was allowing her to register and request her ballot. So I felt like, okay, this is something and it needed a little more explanation. So I sent that to uh, I did send that, but I think this explanation, what basically, unless it's like in CallHub, like I have sent a message before, like I just got off the phone with, X voter and I forgot to fill out the survey. These were the answers I should have put in.
right.
Is that, and then Susan or Michelle or somebody go in and complete the survey things that I overlooked because I was so involved in getting excited what that person said to me that I did sent the text, put it in the notes, save and leave, and forgot to finish the survey. So,
Right. Yeah,
okay,
it's the CallHub help desk who are more familiar with the nuts and bolts and who review the calls, like, you know, Michael, who sends out those little love notes to us when we don't do things exactly the way we're supposed to. So it's Michelle and Susan and Michael, and there are probably a few others who sort of take a look at some of that and decide whether or not the survey questions are being answered properly, or if this was really a no answer or not a no answer, that kind of stuff. But if it relates to problems the voter is having, then that's something that you should put in the notes and you should mark for follow-up. And you don't have to have, 6 paragraphs to describe the
no,
problem. It can be just a couple of sentences, because as a voter assistant, the first thing I'll do is I will write to that member and I will say, we got a follow up from CallHub. Someone called you. You said there was a problem. It seems to be around registration. Could you give me some detail? So I will need to, and then I do that by email. And so they'll tell me what state they're voting in, what the history of the problem is, and then I can take it from there.
excellent. I've got some hands up, so I'm going to call on these people who have their hands up.
Sure.
And Nelica had a question. So, Nelica, you can unmute and ask your question of Randy.
Okay, yes. I had one call. I called one lady, an older lady, and she said I think she votes in Pennsylvania. She had trouble uploading her ballot. She said they sent her about 5 different codes, but none of the codes worked. And so I did ask for help at help desk for her.
Well, that could have been well suited for information in the notes and a
Yeah,
voter
that's what I did.
assistant. Okay, so it wasn't, but the notes don't go to the help, they don't go to CallHub help. They go to the generic help desk. So there is a difference.
Oh,
So if your issue was, I couldn't hear what she was saying, or our connection was lost, or we were cut off in the middle of a sentence, I would say send it to CallHub support, CallHub help desk. But that kind of information would come to us in voter assistance. And then I would probably contact that particular member. And often what I do is I use Zoom to help people figure that out. Sometimes I find the voters, and this is why it's not a good idea to get into too many of the details when you're talking to them when you're phone banking, because sometimes when I get in touch with them, it's this long convoluted story of what's happening, and it usually takes a while to figure out. And on CallHub we don't have a while, we only have a short time. But I can spend, that's why my job takes a long time, because I usually spend a very long time on Zoom with members trying to figure out exactly what their problem is.
Okay, so in
Is
other
this-
words,
I
I
wanna-
did the right
I wanna-
thing. I you know,
Yes.
okay,
Put it in
I
the
put
notes.
in the notes that
Yep.
she did not upload her
Is
ballot.
this also
Yeah.
a situation where we should ask the voter? It sounds like you might need some help. Okay, if I ask a volunteer to be in contact with you, and
You know,
do that, or just
there's
put it in notes.
there's a mixed feeling about that. We did have that discussion in one of our meetings, and I guess the consensus was we didn't feel comfortable with phone bankers making the decision that a member needed help, because we were getting some notes from people saying, well, I think as a phone banker that this person is confused. Well, if the person didn't say they were confused, I'm not sure that it's really okay for the phone banker to assume that, because then you've got a member getting an email from someone like me saying, gee, I understand you're having difficulties. And they'll write back to me. It's like, who said that? I didn't say I was having any difficulties. Why are you telling me that? So,
But on
you
the
know,
on the survey questions, though, if they say, if the phone banker says, would you like a volunteer to
correct.
follow up with you? Okay, I'm putting in a request for volunteer help, and
Yes.
then that adds to the message upstream that person needs the help and
Right.
has been asked about it.
Certainly you can ask the question. I mean, obviously, if the member says, no, I sent my ballot back and it's all okay, and I got my confirmation and everything's good and I'm happy, I'm not sure you need to ask the question, do you need help?
Right.
But if you ask that question and the member says yes, then of course, please do put it in the notes. Absolutely.
Okay, Steve, you were the next one to have your hand up. You've typed hand up in the chat. That's what I'm looking at. So if you have a question, you can go into the chat and type hand up, and would call on you. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I'd
right,
like
Steve.
to give an example of the great work that Randy and her team are doing. In 2022, I was phone banking, and I got an elderly gentleman in Texas, and I asked him if he'd requested his ballot, and he said yes. And he said, but his Leo rejected it. And he said he'd been hearing from all his friends that the Leos in Texas hated Democrats and they're making it impossible to vote. And he said he'd been voting for 40 years. And he said, America is going to hell in a handbasket and democracy is dead. And I've been voting for 40 years and I'm not voting anymore. The hell with America. And he started to cry and then he hung up.
Oh my goodness.
So I didn't really know what the problem was. And so I just put a note, and obviously that ruined my day. And so sometime later, I reached out to Heidi and I said, what happened to this guy? It sounded, just terrible. And she said, he forgot to sign his FPCA. So they took care of it and he voted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's nice. I know as a phone banker, it can feel like your requests for help are going into the void, but they're not. We've got a good team together who are really committed to helping folks, and we will go to extremes to help them. I mean, I can't even detail all the things I've done here, that I have done for voters, and the amount of time I spend on the phone with them and with the counties that they send ballots back to make sure that things happen. So we're committed to doing this and being thorough about it. So just know that when you refer someone to us, that we take it seriously.
Okay. Nelka, did you have another question? Because I see your hand up, but I don't know if that was from before or not.
Well, it was before, but comment. I don't know if this is appropriate, but another woman who lives in Canada votes in New York. She told me that she had gotten so many emails and text messages from a voter site to register to vote. And one asked so many questions that she got really suspicious. And so she hung up. And then they kept calling her for information, kept saying, you didn't finish, you didn't finish. So I know there's some fake websites.
That wouldn't be us.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. Mhm. They're
Well,
fake websites. I've seen
yeah.
that.
I don't know what to say about that. There was something, it's interesting. There was something I got from a voter who I'm wondering if it was the person you're talking about who was afraid of being scammed. I mean, that is something that I sometimes hear when I send a note from the help desk and it's sent from a support email and I identify myself as a voter assistant, but I think some members have gotten scammed in the past and they're really concerned about that. But we do, I would have to say there are times when I'm working with a voter where I do need to ask them information because in order for me to call a county for them, I have to be able to tell the county about the voter. So if I'm calling on behalf of a voter, usually I need their date of birth and I'll need the last address they had in that state because the county will not give me information and they should not give me information, but I give them information. So I say, I'm calling for Jane Smith. This is Jane's birthday. This is the last address she had in the state. I would like to confirm that her registration got to you and that everything is in order. This becomes especially important for people living. I'm in Canada, so I have a US calling plan. It's not a big deal. But for people in other places of the world that don't have US calling plans, they're not able to call in and ask those questions. And so that's what I can do for them. So there are times when I ask questions and some people are concerned about that. But there's also, I don't know if you've gotten any mailings. I know I've gotten 3 or 4 mailings here from the US Center for Voters or Vote, whatever the heck. There's a couple of them. It sounds a little bit like us. And they want people to vote and they're encouraging people to vote, but they don't have very good follow-up. They don't have a voter assistance team like we do. So they're not very helpful. They just mention the FPCA and send people on their merry way.
Okay, and Steve had some feedback from this, and I'm just going to throw it in here for him. Is that that system asks the voter to sign with their mouse, and most of those are
Right.
being rejected because
Yep.
the signatures aren't accepted. Okay, Jan has her hand up next. Go ahead,
Jan,
Jan.
Hi, I called you today.
you did call me. That was you. She left me the best message ever. Ever.
Oh.
That is the nicest message I have ever heard in all the people who've called me for a practice call. I am saving it.
Oh my goodness.
No, really,
Well,
she's good. She may be starting, but she is really good, really upbeat, really thorough, clear. I mean, I can tell you from working on the caller support team and having done this and trained people, it can be really hard at the beginning. It can feel really nerve-wracking. And you came across confident and clear, and I'm very excited about you doing this.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I do have a comment about some of these other organizations that may be very, they may have their heart in the right place, but I've had questions from something called like Overseas Voter Foundation, people
Right.
getting what may not be great advice or might be in conflict a little bit with what we do. Any advice on what to do when people are sort of encountering other organizations that may not be in complete lockstep with our messaging?
I'm not sure exactly what to say about that. I mean, if someone that you're calling says, well, I've already gotten information from the Center for US Voters or from whatever these other organizations are. I mean, I suppose, you could say to them, as a DA member, the information we offer you from this organization, it can be trusted and is thorough. And as far as I know, not FAP and not these other places, none of them offer voter assistance the way we do. None of them do. And it's not to say that they're fake or they're fraudulent, these other organizations. I'm not going to badmouth them in that way, because they mostly encourage people to fill out an FPCA, which is what we tell people that they need to do, because as an overseas voter, that's how you tell your county, I'm alive and well and living in a foreign country, but I still want to vote. But they don't follow up after that. They don't help people. We do. That's the best I can say for that. I know that they have misled people a little bit with this electronic signature, the mouse to mouse pad thing, which generally doesn't match their actual handwritten signature. And so then those folks are in a bind when they send their materials in, because one signature doesn't match the other. So that's not good. That's problematic. They've been told it's problematic, and I believe they've been told to stop doing it. So yeah, this is the first time I can think of, although I don't know, Steve Johnson, you've been around longer than I've been doing this for about 6 years. The beginning, I wasn't as involved with it. I don't know if we've ever had competition like this before. I don't recall any other organizations coming up that have competed with us like that. Do you know of any?
This is the first
Yeah.
time.
And
The issue-
it's tough.
The issue that came up this week were a pair of Texas voters who are in the US right now for a wedding yesterday, and they were going to bring their ballots because Texas is one of the mail states,
Right.
and a challenging state. And that organization had told them that they had to mail their ballot from Costa Rica. They could not mail it from the
And that's
US.
incorrect.
Yeah.
So that's
Yep.
unfortunate. So just tell people to trust us. We know everything. We're all seeing, all knowing, all the time.
One of the things that Beth has a comment and Steve has a hand up, but I want to mention that when I'm doing the voter rolls calls, and I actually talk to the person and saying, if you need assistance, you can email the help desk, and I give that help desk address that's different. But I say, and we have, Democrats Abroad has a very robust voter assistance and voter protection volunteer team to make sure your vote gets counted. So I'm not bad mouthing the other one or however
Right.
they got their ballot in the first place, but I'm making sure to sell what we
Yeah.
got.
Yeah.
I'm saying it positively, and you can address it that way. So Beth, did you want to verbalize your comment? You said you talked to someone who had too many questions. And
I just
oh,
wanted
she
to
ta- okay.
confirm what Nalake was talking about. I too talked to some voters who were getting people calling them who were asking too many questions and they got uncomfortable with it. So
Yeah.
I just told them, no, we don't do that.
No.
In fact, I can't talk to you any longer. So
Okay. Steve, you
I'm
have
just
your
kidding.
hand up next. Okay. Steve, you have your hand up next.
Yeah, I'd like just to make a comment on the new phone bankers. I'm on the practice calls and I get 3 or 4 calls a day. In 2022 is when we started the practice calls, and I got some really good people. I was just blown away by how good they were just doing practice calls. Now there's so many people who are concerned and are volunteering to do phone banking, and I'm getting a wide range, and I've gotten some really terrible practice calls. And so I use it as a training session. If they're doing a really bad job, I'll say, is this your first call? And they say, yes. I say, okay, well, hang in there, reread your material. and then I'll coach them too. I'll say, are you going to send me a text? And they'll say, I didn't know I could send a text. And I'll say, so
Uh-oh.
look over under my name. There's a little thing that says text. Click on it, and then a dialog box will appear, and then click on one and click on send, And I'll say, well, you didn't remind me that ballots are coming out on September 21st. And so I'm coaching them. So I think I'm helping them. And a lot of them are kind of fumbling around. I said, just, so I'll give them a pep talk, say, keep with it. You'll get better, I know. And so that's how I'm helping the new phone bankers.
Right?
Yeah, I
Does
do that as
anybody else?
well.
Good.
Does anybody else? I got a call this week. I was doing phone banking, voter rolls, and I have dual SIMs. I have an American number and I have a Costa Rica number. And phone call came in from a Texas phone banker to my cell phone while I was phone banking on voter roll calls. And she was pretty new. I finished up what I was doing and then talked to her. It was kind of fun. Does anybody else have a burning question or a comment that you want to offer while we have Randi here with us? Ray.
Right?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
unmuting.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure I should know the answer, but let me put the question anyway. For those of us who are getting back in the saddle, where would we find the best training video for refresher to go through the phone banking process? Is that fairly obvious on the DA website?
There's nothing fairly obvious on the DA website. I'm sorry to say, no one asked me when they put that thing together. Oh, we're being recorded. I shouldn't say that, should I? Do you know it's on the top heading? When you go to the DA site, I can't remember what the heading is, what it says.
Phone banking training.
Yeah, but it's under, what's the heading that it's under? Let me just go. I think I may have it up on here. Democrats abroad. Let me just take a look because it's not, I'm sorry to say it's not immediately obvious. I mean, I can give you the link, but that's not really. So if you go to Democrats Abroad and you go to, there we are. If you go to do something, which, that makes sense. Okay, I can get on board with that. If you go to do something, you'll see phone banking comes up under that heading. If you just hover over it, you go to phone bank. And then when you go to phone bank, assuming that you're signed into the site, because you have to be signed in as a member, otherwise it doesn't give you the chance to learn about phone banking if it doesn't know that you're a member. And then you scroll down a bit and it has the video. They've done a really good job with the video. It's really thorough. And the nice thing about it is you do it on your own time. You can stop it and rewind it if there's something that doesn't make sense to you and you want to see it again and again. So I think that's a really good place to go to do that.
One of the questions, and there's some little call out, little brief ones too, like little
Right.
excerpts, what to do about call ended early and how to answer this question. So, little things that take 2, 3, 4 minutes for specific questions. But one question I got from some of my team members when we were about to switch to this new phase, now that ballots are out, was there going to be another training? And I think I noticed yesterday, I looked at the numbers and I noticed the number of calls were down. And I think, there are people who are like, okay, I got to study these instructions. I've got to study the script. This is different. Am I ready? And they're a little hesitant to jump in, just like brand new phone bankers can be hesitant to jump in. But the message is, no, there's not a new additional training. Now, there are 2 or 3 training sessions that are still on the DA website on phone banking training coming up this week. But there's the video training that you can do whenever, and you can stop and start it and review it, and just to get your feet wet to get back in. But we do have a revised script, revised instructions, because we're moving on to this next phase of get the ballots returned is the main thing.
Right.
So,
and I don't know, Connie, how you manage. So Steve, what you're talking about, I've tried to do the same thing with practice callers who called me when I've been able to pick up, but CallHub cuts us off. Susan Penrod wagged her finger at me a little bit because if we stay on too long with them, we're costing money. So we're not supposed to stay on too long. But one of the things that I used to do quite a bit, I haven't been able to do it as much recently, is to invite new callers to come on with me on Zoom and to have them mute and for me to make 5 or 6 calls and for them to actually see what this looks like when it's happening. And the best thing that could ever happen when I did that was when I messed it up, because then they could see that it's as much an art as a science, and that sometimes you forget to ask about the email. Oh, well, I'll do better next time. I mean, the
Yeah.
world does not stop turning on its access because I forgot to ask somebody about an updated email. Yes, I know the IT team would like me to do that, and I try and remember. I do, but it doesn't always work. So I've had some of the new callers that have been watching me when I make 5 or 6 calls, and then I'll stop making calls and I'll ask them to unmute and we'll have a conversation. And they're like, Randi, you didn't ask for the email, or you didn't answer this question, or you didn't do the other thing. I said, you're absolutely right. I did
Well,
not.
I have one thing to add to that is that I have offered, I think that fly on the wall experience for the new incoming caller to be able to actually see it in action is
Yep.
really good. But that leads me to one more question that I would like to have you address is what are Zoom rooms? How can we communicate if we're talking to a voter who either contacted us personally or that they're having a problem when we're doing these follow-up calls? Did you get your ballot? How do we communicate the benefit and how to access Zoom rooms and what they
So
are?
as a phone banker, you wouldn't. As a phone banker, you would send them to the help desk, and then it's up to us on the help desk. So if I had my preference when I am writing to members when they have a problem, I would find it easier if they would drop into one of our drop-in Zooms or tell me when they're free and I'll send them a Zoom link and I have a conversation rather than spending 7 days emailing back and forth. And then you get time zone differences and it gets to be really complicated. That's only half bad when you're talking about registration. But now that we've gotten into this next stage of things where ballots are coming out and people are under the gun for time now, if you haven't registered, you've got to get in there and get registered. There's still time, but there's not a lot of time. You have to get that done, get your registration in so that you give your county the chance to even send you the ballot. And then if you're unlucky enough to have to mail it back, you better start moving because tick, 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 you're going to run out of time to get that thing back. I can take care of in 10 minutes on a Zoom what it could take me 5 days of back and forth emailing to do. So we are upping the number of drop-in Zoom rooms that we have. And we are also making appointments with people to do Zoom rooms because it's a quick fix. But that wouldn't be something that a phone banker would do. The phone banker would refer them to the voter assistance, and then on our end at the help desk, we would make a determination about setting up Zoom rooms. But just so all of you know, in your travels, because I know in some countries, doesn't happen as much in Canada in terms of in-person registration things. But just know that if you're doing that kind of work and people are having problems, take a look at our schedule and see if there's a drop-in Zoom scheduled when you happen to be helping somebody, and you can come join us and we're happy to try and help.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording now. We're going to have a brief moment for each of our members to talk, introduce themselves. Let's see, let me stop recording. Yes.